All right, we left off on a big one. Prop on temporarily, cowl on also temporarily. But it's time to get at least one of those a little further towards being fixed permanently. So I had asked everyone their opinions on cowl fastening techniques, and we got a few, and I'm happy to hear that Skybolts were at least some of them, because the way that things worked and the fact that I took a week off from videos meant I didn't have a chance to fully read all the opinions provided before reaching out to my friends at Fairings-Etc and getting their opinions as well. Dan over there at Fairings-Etc said, look, you gotta work with Skybolts. It's an amazing system. They're top-notch quality. They're gonna make your life way better compared to the hinge technique provided by Vans. We decided on a hybrid setup. That means that the hinges that I already have on the airplane can stay, and I still think that that's a great way to go, to have some hinges on the firewall, lower cowl area, so you can just plop in a pin and have it secured. Everywhere else, just about though, I'm going with Skybolts. I gotta say, first impressions of this kit have blown me away. The hardware is just beautiful quality, true aerospace grade quality. The instructions, robust. A fun note about the instructions, the image they have on the front there, the same image I used to pull up on Google when people asked me what kind of airplane I was building. It's a beautiful specimen of an RV7. And I'm glad that the Skybolts also think so. Maybe someday this hunk of junk will be on the cover of something. So we're going to do a run through Skybolts 101. I am learning at the same time as teaching. Probably not the best setup, but hey, what can go wrong, right? Oh, shit. To start, I need to get some of the aluminum plates in place. This is going to help me further refine my cowl placement as well as the edge quality, so that I can get a near seamless transition from aluminum to fiberglass. Now currently I'm using just some rough sawn aluminum tabs. They've worked great, but some of them have started to resemble Swiss cheese as I adjust the position of the cowl and then have to adjust the position of the clecos accordingly. I've already taken a sneak peek. You're gonna love what Skybolts has to replicate this same temporary fastening technique when using their system. I am sore. It may have been a week for y'all, but it's only been a night since I did the whole prop cowl, like 14, 16 hour day. And I will tell you, at one point in my younger, more reckless days, I helped a buddy move in the summer heat. Then afterwards fell into a river where I managed to crash into like every single boulder on the rapids, class 3 on the way down. I still woke up that morning feeling more comfortable than I did this last one. It's the pain is real. Now there's a few things I'm juggling here. I want the distance center to center to be around 3.5 inches. I want the spacing from this lip to the forward edge of the firewall to be about 1/4 inch. That's going to prevent, if I do have any gap, a small gap between fiberglass and aluminum, it's going to prevent it from being just a dark hole. In fact, you probably won't see it as much because you'll see the painted Skybolt mount back behind it. The last thing I'm trying to juggle is I would like to have symmetry around the center line of the fuselage. We're going to have to adjust spacing to balance that 3.5 inch, but try to align it so I either have one dead center or two straddling center. So we're a little long with this final Skybolt winding up, overlapping onto my hinge a little bit. They have lap joints in them, and I've intentionally left a little space for adjustment. In fact, the instructions tell you to do so, not my own genius here, which means I can pick up a little bit of the slack through each one, starting on that edge and just working my way over this way so that this aligns at the same spot that that one starts. Now there is another added piece of complexity here, and it's that Skybolts advises to have your first Skybolt here, on the right and left, start at the same height from the edge of this cowl lip as the side ones will. That way you have a constant line that lands on this corner one and then continues up. That spacing would be ideal, but my plan of having a lower hinge might infringe on that a little bit because I don't have enough room for the bracket to go down, and I'd be concerned that if I cut away too much of this hinge, this might be prone to flapping. I might have to be okay with some unideal spacing, maybe two of these kind of sitting kitty corner to each other rather than having them share a corner skybolt. However, the name of the game right now is to continue to fit these, again, trying to get start and stop at the same spot, straddle my center line here, and approximately 3.5 inches center to center. All right, a little closer to ideal spacing. I got one right on the center line. To me, that's like silver medal, second place finisher. I think it would have been cooler to have them on either side of the center line. I don't know why I'm weird like that. But it beats not being able to get a symmetrical layout at all. And then as far as left to right goes, I'm starting nearly identically with regard to my horizontal seam on the cowling. So I think this is about the layout we're gonna want. Now I've just got to really hone it in, get them all perfectly level, straight, and equally spaced. And I believe we can match drill, or at least, yeah, match drill, and cleco them in, get them ready for countersinking, and then eventually riveting. So I'm just going down the line. Each one of these has two sizes of countersinks, a little bit of final fitting, some deburring, and then it gets put back on the plane. I'm doing them one by one to keep them in the same order. And then we'll go ahead and rivet them to the firewall. Eventually you're going to wind up with a rivet that doesn't meet edge distance, or worse, is even like right on the edge of one of these fasteners because of the way they interlock. It's fine. You just mash a rivet in there, keep moving forward as if it was never a problem. There's even some images in the instructions, which is, it's like my strategy. I love it, man. But I guess the thinking is you're always going to have enough rivets in one of these. If one is just kind of hanging out on the edge there, it should still be fine. Now that I got the flanges in place, before I go to rivet them permanently there, I'm just taking a look at some things. And one way you can do that are these really cool inserts for the flanges. They will temporarily take the place of the quarter turn fastener. And what they are is they're just a cleco adapter. And so much like I had my little metal tabs and clecos to temporarily hold this thing, I can do the same thing with the Skybolts fastener. And the cool part is, if I don't move anything, that cleco hole will then become my pilot hole for the final fastener. I'm pretty happy about it. It's a great way to start to test this thing out. Give it a test drive and make sure everything is functioning like we want it to.
Along with the Cleco adapters, Skybolt also provides you with a magnetic adapter that allows you to use magnets to locate where the fastener needs to go. I tried to explain this in a long-winded narrative, but out of respect for your time, we're cutting that short, and I'll do it in this voiceover. The magnets operate just like magnets do and allow you to figure out exactly where the center of each Skybolt is without actually seeing it, something that is all too familiar in building an airplane. I did find that the adapters held the magnet a little too far off of the back side, not allowing you to get perfect center. The magnet had a lot of play, and you didn't exactly know if it was sort of honed in on its counterpart on the inside of the cowl. I beat this by drilling it out a little bit so that magnet was nearly at the inside surface of the cowl, and the outside magnet would then find its partner pretty securely. Utilizing the magnets to drill the holes and then the Clecos to hold the thing secure, I was able to get the cowl held in place enough to figure out where my trim lines were going to be. The other aspect of this was removing the prop in favor of my little MDF wheel that allowed me to secure either half of the cowl directly to that, making sure that it wouldn't move if its counterpart was gone. Between these two things, I was able to mark and soon cut some very irreversible lines on the cowl, getting it to its final shape.
I love using tape to mark lines. It's really handy, but if you're using tape, especially thinner tape, it will bow when you pull it taut, sort of counterintuitive. But if that bows into your work, you're hosed. And so I'm checking with some impromptu straight edge here, and sure enough, we got some correction to do before I make these cuts. It's looking pretty good. There's some areas where I need just a slight amount of adjustment. Luckily, I've got too much instead of not enough in most places. I'm hoping that the few areas where I'm a little light on material, we'll call it that, where there's some hairline gaps, that as other pieces close together, those will wind up closing up as well. Back off, more sanding, fine tuning as I often call it, then back on for another fit. Alright, so I'm not kidding when I say I've had this thing on and off probably 50 times. It's hardly an exaggeration. It has been 5-6 hours of just making very minor adjustments, but I'm motivated, I'm propelled forward by the results I'm getting. To be honest, it surpasses even my expectations. I'm usually not that great at this stuff. That is, anything that requires patience or hard work, I usually bow out pretty easily. But it's looking good. I'm tightening up all these gaps. I got a few more adjustments to make before I think I start looking into really solidifying the position by anchoring some fasteners. Now I have a bit of tape on the inside, just slightly pulling the hinge sort of out of line, which seems counterintuitive to what we're trying to do, but it's gonna help pull this cowl really taut up against the firewall. And we're talking a few tenths of a millimeter. It really, more than anything, is intended to pick up the slack that is inherently in those piano hinges and ensure that we have a fit on our pin that's as tight as possible. All of this would be pretty simple if it weren't for Roger and his big mouth. Now here's the deal. Last week, Roger mentioned that there on the plans is a shim involved in the firewall side of this piano hinge, an 020 shim that is intended to help keep the fiberglass flush with the sheet metal and firewall, because we're dealing with two different thicknesses of material. Now I responded to that comment quite confidently, sort of indicating that my omission of this shim was on purpose. It was not. I just happened to be staring at a different part of the plans where it didn't look like I needed a shim at all. And I noticed that when I had everything aligned, my fiberglass indeed stuck out just a hair. And if I held up a piece of 020 to that system there, it looked like it would have been perfect. So I spent the better part of 3 hours drilling out all the rivets on the firewall side, creating a shim, dimpling it, getting it riveted back into that system so that I could take out some of that unflushness, if you will. So my morning shot thanks to Roger, but we got it done, and I do appreciate that it looks a little nicer. So I recently finished up throwing my headlamp on, getting up underneath the top cowling to mark where my holes for my Skybolt grommets are going to need to go. This was simply transferring from the holes in the flange up to the cowl so that I know where to start drilling. Before I can fully insert that hardware and test this thing out, I also need to get the flange permanently attached to the airplane itself. To do that, I removed a bunch of the tape I had on the forward fuselage from marking out where my cowl trim line should be, and started riveting that whole unit in place. It's about at this time that I figured I would take a quick break and break down this system, all the components, so that you have an idea what the heck I'm talking about as I move through this. Starting on the airplane side of things, we have the flange. And the flange is what you've seen me match drilling and installing. It is a sequence of interlocking aluminum pieces that will eventually hold the anchors. The anchors or receptacles are really the heart of the beast and what get riveted to the flange to accept the quarter turn fastener hardware. Again, these flange pieces are what you've seen me spacing out, match drilling, and soon attaching to the plane. The receptacles or anchors, again, really the heart of this whole system. I will go a little more in depth into that in a moment. I want to focus just momentarily on the grommets, the quarter turn fasteners, and the retaining springs. This is basically all the hardware that's going to be on the cowl side of things. To start, we have the grommets. These are very precisely machined, essentially grommets. They're aptly named pieces that really make up the most visible part of the hardware on the plane. They house the quarter turn fasteners themselves. In order to keep the fasteners inside the grommets, we have two different types of retaining rings. The first is a temporary retaining ring. It's essentially a black O-ring, and it is what we're going to use prior to paint. This is so that before paint you can easily pull all these out and not have to worry about masking off a ton of grommets and quarter turn fasteners. Once you're completed with your paint job and you want to keep these in on a more permanent basis, you are also supplied with the stainless steel O-ring. And there is a tool here to help install those, again, on a more permanent basis. For now, we're going to be utilizing the O-ring, the rubber O-ring, the temporary retaining system in order to keep all this together. So in order to assemble these, you want to make sure that your kit has pliers included. These pliers are custom for the system and simply allow you to insert the spring-loaded quarter turn fastener so that you can depress that spring and get the T section of the fastener through the grommet. this is now fairly permanently locked in place unless you get your pliers back out because you have some sort of need to remove it. From there, the whole unit gets dropped into your cowling, which is where you'll find a need for some sort of retainer. Again, we're utilizing the temporary retainers on mine, which is just an O-ring that sort of rubber bands into place along the section of the grommet here. Now that is essentially it. It's in there, it's locked in place, and that's how it's going to live up until we go to paint. Back over to the plane side of things in the flange. The flange will be home to our anchor, or our receiver, I think Skybolts calls it. And I'm going to have to do some work here with some clecos because I don't really want to grommet this into place. Now, the clecos are going to be kind of in the way, but bear with me as I move through this. All right, with the receptacle on the flange, I'm going to go over a few components of the system. First, there's the inside insert, and this is basically what your quarter turn fastener is going to lock into, and it allows for adjustment up or down simply by screwing it in or out. That is really a key function to this system. That allows you to adjust the space of the quarter turn fastener between the grommet and the flange. So as you go over curves on this thing, you might need more or less space in order to get a tight fit. You might also be able to adjust that amount of space to prevent buckling in the system. On the back side, we have a pin, a retaining spring, and a few other things that we won't get into right now. The most important pieces of the backside are the pin and the retaining spring. This pin is going to be installed on every anchor, every receptacle from the factory, and you're going to leave it there until you have your depth set. Once your depth is set, you pull the pin like a grenade and you get the heck out. No, you simply lock it into place and then your quarter turn fastener is ready to rock. In order to get to that stage, what we want to do is temporarily engage the quarter turn fastener, which this one is now locked, but you can see there's a lot of space between our mock cowl and our anchor, or our flange, I should say. So what we do then is we screw this in, just like any other machine screw, but we're gonna go until we're satisfied with the tightness of the fit between these two pieces. I'm gonna call it good right about there. That's nice and secure. It's not binding, but it's holding it tight. From there we have two options. If we have access to the back side of the fastener, we can simply pull the pin. However, a better way to do it when you don't have access is to quickly depress and pop out your quarter turn fastener and remove the cowl section. With the cowl removed, you'll then have probably less impeded access to the back side where you can then pull your pin. Pulling the pin is as simple as using a fingernail, or in this case a flathead screwdriver, and removing that little guy. With it removed, you're going to give your inner fastener a quick twist to what they call the 1 in 7 position, 1 in 7 o'clock, and you'll hear a click when this thing locks into place. There it is. Now we can no longer screw our inner fastener in or out. It is locked, meaning our depth is set and this whole system is ready for use. When we turn our quarter turn fastener in, I can't turn anymore. It's not going to screw down anymore. It's locked. We're ready to rock. Now, what happens if you later need to adjust that depth? Well, you can simply come in with a pick tool and temporarily release the locking spring, the retaining spring, or if you need to do it on a more permanent basis, you can come in with your pick tool from the other side, release the spring, and reinsert your pin. Now, there are some other cool aspects to this system. One, if you didn't get your pilot hole or your final hole for your grommet and your fastener in quite the correct spot, there are some floating receptacles that allow a little bit of movement so that you're not pulling something too far one way or the other, creating buckling in your cowling. You can substitute a regular receptacle for a floating receptacle on occasion without any sacrifice to the overall holding power. Though you don't want every single receptacle to be a floating receptacle, things would get messy. Another option is to replace your flush grommet, your normal grommet, with an extended one. This is great for curves around cowl where there might be a lot of space between your flange and your cowling, and so you need just a deeper grommet there. The kit here has provided 2 for the front of my cowl. Also included in some things that we've gone over, the tools. We have several different ways of marking center. Center of the grommet hole and center of the pilot hole for the grommet hole. These templates are provided in the kit, as well as I mentioned before, you have your Cowl fasteners. I think I had at least a half dozen, maybe a dozen of these to help you temporarily fasten your cowl. And when you're looking for where to drill for your Cowl fastener, you have the magnetic fastener so that you can magnetically locate the center of the hole in your flange. All of this so far has combined to create a very easily installed system. How easy? Well, let's get back to it and see how this thing comes together. That's seriously it. The first one's working. Couldn't be more simple. I'm excited. Now you don't have to do one at a time. I can do plenty. This taking it off, putting it on for one, that was just to show you. Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm gonna go ahead and take it off, drill a number of holes, get them set up. I won't do them all because I just don't have that much faith in my abilities. But I'll do maybe 4 or 5 more and then test fit it, see how we're looking. This thing is, so far I like it though. All right, I got the middle 5 done. I kid you not, it was like 20 to 30 minutes and those were knocked out. Again, a lot of the work already done with the flange. I think that was probably the hardest part, and then just getting better with the step drill, being able to steer it and punch these holes pretty quickly and accurately has made this a breeze. I'm gonna once again remove it, and I think I'm just gonna work my way down each side, calling the top cowl, at least the firewall section, done. Great, but I don't have time to stare too long. I still have the sides to do. I'm gonna get started now. cowl is fastened. And I love that because it's been a lot of work, to be honest, to get this thing cut, trimmed to shape, fit, and fastened on. And I think it's about 90% there. There are a few gaps and a few misalignments that I'll probably take care of in the coming weeks, but for now, I'm gonna take a break from beating myself up over getting this thing perfect and just appreciate that it's done. The fastening, that is. There is loads more to do on this cowl before we can call it done. Now, back to the fasteners. My favorite part, as I mentioned, the look, maybe not for everyone. The benefits of a hinge fastened cowl are visible, or invisible I should say. You wouldn't have any of these fittings on your cowl. Now I happen to think it looks precise. I think it looks machined. I think it looks high performance, and these fasteners really are all of those things. On top of that, they're relatively easy to install. You've seen me botch some of the most simple tasks on this airplane, and yet I was able to get this wrapped up with relatively little confusion. That's amazing. Now if you're wondering how much I was paid to say all these glowing things about the Skybolts, well, I wasn't per se, but the system was provided free of charge by the fine folks at Fairings-Etc and Skybolt. They got together when they heard I was trying to figure out how to fasten my cowl and said, "We think our system is awesome. Will you highlight it in a video?" I jumped at the chance and here we are. That doesn't mean I can't say anything bad about them. It wasn't written into any sort of contract, so let's do just that. So first off, I'm lucky they were provided free of charge because they are quite expensive. We'll get that out in the open. I think the systems, depending on how complete of a package you go for, I think range anywhere from $300 to $700 or $800. Several $100s on cowl fasteners is a lot, but in the world of aviation, it's actually pretty reasonable. In fact, the hardware for my oil door alone wound up running somewhere over $100. I was blown away, and it's not even nearly as good as looking as the Skybolt. I will tell you that it is a cost well represented in the product. Everything from the kitting, the instructions, the machining, the quality is there. There have been plenty of items along the way on this build where I have had a similar price tag and been fairly let down at what comes out of the box. Not the case with the Skybolts. Fitting and installation takes a bit of time, but as I mentioned, it's relatively straightforward. What I have been stuck up on is the actual releasing of the Skybolts themselves. There are times where they get caught, and I don't know if it's just that I haven't figured it out yet, or if that's going to be a struggle moving forward. I'll do some research and I'll report back in future videos. But for now, it does take a little bit of finesse to get the cowling off of the plane, even after all the Skybolts are loosened. There are some other small hiccups I ran into along the way. First off, you're going to want to make sure that you get the tools provided by Skybolt, including the pliers for assembling the quarter turn fasteners themselves. They make it much easier to get the fastener in the grommet, but even still, the pliers don't all the way fit the grommet, and sometimes I wind up shooting them across the garage. That is about all my gripes for the system, relatively minor things, and they definitely wouldn't affect my decision making on purchasing the system. Now remember, when you do go to purchase your system, you can get Skybolts anywhere, but you're going to want to talk to Fairings-Etc, who are great at putting together a package specifically for you, talking to you about the nuances of each install location, from the top arc to the side seams, to the bottom cowling, and even the underneath. They'll tell you the pros and cons of each area and what their recommendation is. They're also going to set you up with the proper tools, as they did me, to make sure that installation is a breeze. A link is in the description to both Skybolts and Fairings-Etc, so you can research the product yourself. For me, that's about it for now. It's getting late. I do have a lot of work left on the cowl, but soon we will be back to the engine, the baffling, and getting this thing a little closer to first fire up, which is still months out, but inching its way closer every day. If you want to be around for that, make sure you're subscribed, hit the thumbs up button, and share this video with a friend if you're so inclined. I will catch you on the next one. Thanks a lot for sticking around. It's bedtime. What are these things called? Skybolts, yeah. This would allow me to drill the holes for the... What are these things called?